Good afternoon, everybody. What's going on? This is Average Discussion. Thank you for joining me today in Studio Charger. Today is Wednesday, June 12th, 2024. It's about 95 degrees outside here, just outside the Salt Lake City area. Really warm today. So I'm in the shade. I'm hoping that I can get through this without the AC on, because I know that you guys can hear it in the microphone. And I'm really trying to avoid that. But just know that might be a reality soon enough, because it's pretty warm today. Hey, I hope you guys are having a great day. Okay, I hope things are going the way that you wanted them to. You know, I really do hope that for everybody, except for maybe like a select few people in this world. But that, you know, for the most part, I hope that you're having a great day. I had a very interesting day. Okay, so we did the Instagram live episode yesterday, and it was a little rough, not gonna lie. Not as many people hopped on as I was kind of hoping. I don't know that I gave enough time frame, and I thought maybe there'd be some more random people, but I didn't really have any of that. So I don't know. I'm gonna continue to do that. I just got to fine tune it and polish it a little bit. I think it was a good idea. There seemed to be some issues on maybe some of the software side of it for. You know, I couldn't see the people, but when I downloaded the video, the people who joined in on the live, I was able to see that after I downloaded it. But in the moment, I wasn't able to see it. So I got some things to work out. But I think that's going to be fun and pretty exciting to do. And I look forward to doing it again. But today, I'm just going to do a regular episode, okay? So my day started off pretty uneventful. I was super late to work. I turned my alarm off and went back to sleep. I don't know. Yeah, it was, that part of it was a rough morning for sure. But then, I got to work and it was, nobody missed me. We'll just leave it at that. Everything was running pretty good. There was no major concerns to address. So nothing to fix right out the gate. And that's not normal, but it's becoming more normal as things have downsized and there's less for me to really kind of take care of. It's worked out. So I was just browsing the socials and you know what I said, you know what, I'm gonna help out my local townsfolk. Okay, so I got on the Facebook and I got on the township page here. We have a page here that the whole town has access to, right? And I made a comment or a post, excuse me. I made a post, and in that post I said, just so you know, I saw some biker boys state police taxing the King's Highway. Keep your head on a swivel. That's all I said. I didn't, say like, oh, those crappy highway patrolmen are out again or any of that stuff. I feel the way that I feel about it, and I made my little jab, but it wasn't really too offensive in my opinion. Okay. But, being the community that I live in, and I guess that little jab, people feel a certain kind of way about it. It kind of started some issues. Nothing too crazy, but it started some issues. And the biggest issue, at least right out the gate, was that I spelled swivel wrong. I used 2 L's instead of 1. Honest mistake. But of course, people can't wait to correct you on those things when they feel a certain kind of way about the way you feel about their traditions and values and morals, right? So this guy gets out there and he says, hey, by the way, this is how you spell swivel. So he's like, oh, it's swivel, Paul Revere. Oh, okay. I see what you're doing, right? And so I just replied to the guy and said, hey, thanks, man. I don't know how I would have moved on with my day if I wasn't aware that I'd made a public typo. So thank you for that. Good looking out. It is what it is. People get hung up on that stuff, but they do it as a small jab to make you feel inadequate for challenging something that they hold near and true to their heart, right? Or because they feel a certain kind of way about it. And so, they point out the small things like, oh, here's another guy talking bad about the police. Let me just go ahead and make fun of his grammar. Well, hey, cool, whatever. But the thing is, I don't really care if I misspell stuff, and I'm not afraid to admit that I misspell stuff all the time. I mean, if you've ever listened to any one of my episodes, I mispronounce things all the time. And then when I can't figure it out, I just go with whatever I decide, right? Like yesterday, my problem was niche. I don't even, to this moment, I still don't know how to pronounce it. So from here on out, I'm going to say Nietzsche. It's like a Nike off-brand, okay? So that stuff doesn't bother me. But then another guy, he said, and I'm going to add this in there. He goes, normally, comma, if you don't break the law, you have nothing to worry about. I said, well, normally, period, you would be right. You know, just a little play on words, because apparently words have meaning all of a sudden, right? So if we're going to say normally, if you don't break the law, you have nothing to worry about. Well, then normally, using the word normally in that way implies that there are situations where that's not normal and you have something to worry about. So which one is it? Right? It is what it is. I just made my little comments, and the post ended up getting deleted, which sucks because I found some very, very good information, right? And I'm going to get into some of that information. Here's a little bit of the backstory of why this bothers me the way that it does, okay? I don't have a problem with police, okay? I think that some of them are bad people, just like I think that some soldiers were bad people, right? Just like some people are bad people, right? It's impossible for it not to exist regardless of the institution, right? So I don't think that they're bad people. I don't want to live in a society where we don't have police. What I don't want is to live in a society where we're having enforcement on things that are not beneficial to the overall group, right? And let me elaborate on that a little bit, okay? My biggest issue with highway patrolmen in particular is that I personally feel that their only purpose is to get money from everyday people just trying to get somewhere. Now, is that to say that they don't respond to tragic incidents? No, they absolutely do. And that is an added benefit to having them out there, but it's not their purpose, right? And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I don't feel like it's their purpose. In my opinion, their purpose is to enforce traffic violations, right? Then you factor in that where I live in particular is kind of a hot zone for cars transporting large amounts of narcotics from state to state, okay? It's a major interstate, I-80. And there is several times, I don't want to say a year because I'm probably wrong on that, but at least a couple times a year, there's a pretty decent sized drug bust on I-80, okay? So as a result, they pull people over for a lot of things that are, yes, against the codes, laws, whatever, but they're really kind of pointless, right? So they'll pull you over for things like, I don't know, a license plate light being out, just so they have justification to stop you in hopes that they can find something else. And I understand that that's a tactic, and they got to do stuff like that to be able to find those big drug bust things, right? But at the same time, it's super fucking annoying, right? It's super annoying. And then you factor in that they like to sit on the side of the road. Well, I've seen more unsafe acts happen as a result of people seeing them and panicking, slamming on their brakes, changing lanes when they don't need to, just disrupting the entire flow of traffic when they probably didn't need to anyways. But they see the cop or the highway patrolman and they get nervous, right? And they react with this knee-jerk reaction because they see him, right? So I would argue that, yes, there is situations where driving at high rates of speed creates situations that could cause accidents and all those things. That does happen, but I would argue that their presence is more dangerous most of the time. That's just my opinion, and you don't have to agree with that opinion. But that's how I feel. So then I started doing some more research, right? Because I'd planned on going back to this post and kind of just throwing some stuff in people's faces, right? Because I feel a certain kind of way about a lot of the people out here. And it's weird because it's like anytime you challenge something that people feel like they're supposed to, what's the best way to say this? That they're supposed to support, right? Like I live in a community where it's like the intended idea is that you support things like the police, like the American flag, like the soldiers, right? It's like an expectation. And if you go against that, all of a sudden you were looked at as like this lesser person who shouldn't be here. If you don't like it, go to Venezuela or something, right? And I think it's really taken out of context because the fact that I don't want to be bothered for driving a little bit faster is not because I want an anarchist society, right? It's because I don't think that it's as bad as they would like us to think that it is, personally, right? And they've got statistics and they're like, oh, X amount of people died, this and that. Well, okay, well, here's some of your statistics. So, and I'll post the links on the socials. It should already be on Facebook. And I want to say, Facebook right now because I typed a lot, so I didn't get it. So I'll get it out on the other socials, on Instagram, Threads, X, all that stuff, right? But I came across this website, and it kind of broke down. It was specialized to the state of Utah, and it broke down that in the United States as a whole, okay, in 2020, the United States, the states within the country, made $9 billion off of fines and fees primarily associated with traffic violations, okay? New York, California, and Texas combined make up a third of that $9 billion. The state of Utah collected $60 million in fines and fees. And again, this is primarily focused on traffic style violations, right? And the reason that they said that this is happening is because back in the 70s, before I was born, before I was even thought of, right? The states kind of had, like, the people within the states kind of had this tax revolt, they called it, to where they wanted the property taxes reduced. So California started a law where it went from 2 to 1, basically cutting it in half. And so the state of California lost a ton of revenue, obviously, in property tax income, right? Well, other states obviously followed suit with that. So now you have the situation where states nationwide that don't have the revenue of, say, California because of population and economy, right, are now in this pinch where they're losing a bunch of money. So their way to get around that was they started implementing new fees. They started increasing traffic violation fees and court fees and surcharges on those fees and all this stuff, right? Which leads us to where we are now, where speed traps are a predominant form of revenue for the states, right? The states, the cities, the townships, whatever, right? So it became a normalized thing. And then it goes on to list and cite that on top of the $60 million that the state of Utah made in 2020 from these things, which is interesting because there was a lot of people working from home. I drove on these roads. There was less people for sure. There was still a fair amount of people, but there was definitely less than there is today, right? Very interesting that they still made $60 million off that. Now, granted, in the grand scheme of these outrageous budgets, that's really nothing, but that's a lot of money to me. You know what I mean? Maybe that's not a lot of money to you, but I'm going to assume that's probably a lot of money to you, right? And it averaged out to like, for the country, it was like $27 per person within the country, right? Now, obviously, not everybody got a citation and paid those fees, but that's what it balanced out to. Is if you broke it down to everybody within the country, it was $27. And I want to say that Utah was roughly around 18. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's getting really hot in here. So hang on one second. Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I made it about 13 minutes with no AC or airflow going. I'll try to keep it low, but it's way too hot. Don't leave your kids in the car. Holy smokes. Don't leave your dogs in the car. It's out of control. So back to what I was talking about. Okay, so in 2020, they made $60 million. It broke down to about $18, if I recall correctly, per person. Okay? Well, they cited a town here in Utah that literally 40% of its township/city revenue was generated by speed traps. 40% of the revenue was generated by speed traps, right? So, yes, you can make the argument that they're out there for safety. Okay, but here's my issue with it when it comes to the safety disguise. I mean, if you've listened to any of my episodes, anytime I hear a government institution of any kind say the words, "this is for safety," I automatically know it's probably not for safety, right? Like, because they throw that out there to garnish the support, right? They tell you like, "Oh, well, we have to do this to protect everyday people. It's for everybody's safety, so we have to ban this." And people are like, yeah, I need to be safe from that. No, you don't most of the time. Like, and then you start to see that, oh, there's financial revenue generated by this thing for safety, right? But 40% of that town's revenue is strictly from speed traps. And I think that was back in 2016. So it may not be that now. Okay, but the stats that they presented, that's what it was, right? The state of Utah is trying to introduce legislation to limit these court fees or even reduce them or remove them, but the simple fact that you have a government, a local government, a state government, whatever the case is, legislation, or putting legislation out there that says that they're going to cap the amount of profit that a department or a city can make based off of these fees, right? And I think it was like 25%. You guys will really have to read through the article. It's very in depth, and I don't remember all of it off the top of my head. This is kind of random. I'm sitting on the side of my house, just got home from work, whatever, right? But I'm pretty sure they said they were going to try to cap it at 25%. So the fact that they know they have to cap it because they know that these departments and cities and institutions are going to capitalize off of it, like, that's crazy to me. And you're going to tell me it's for my safety, right? In my opinion, anytime something becomes a for-profit thing, it's a business, right? So fixing tickets makes sense to me, right? Punishments for crimes makes sense to me. Fines does not, because that just implies that anything's legal for a fee, right? And it leads me to think that it's more of a business, because now you're going to be dependent on the revenue generated from this stuff. And we all know that the quota thing, though they spent years telling us wasn't a thing and then redacted that and said, no, actually we do have quotas. That's why they have quotas, because they have to make a certain amount of money to balance out their budgets, or else there's no need for a quota, right? There's a certain amount of revenue that they're trying to gain, that they're trying to reach. And that has to happen in order to keep their budgets. Now, do I have a better source of revenue for them? No, I don't. But that's also why I don't go to those committees or anything like that. All I can tell you is that I am not a fan of the idea of understanding, because we've all seen it happen. We've all seen it happen where they'll find a road that is a major commuting road. There's no real bypass of any kind, and they sit on the side. They stagger up and down the thing, and they pull people over nonstop on there because it's easy money. Because at the end of the day, we all break some kind of violation. In fact, go ahead and let me know how many laws there are. I bet you can't even figure it out, unless you're going to go through and literally count every single one in the code book, but that's still probably not going to be all of them, right? So there's always something that we're probably all doing wrong. It's easy to do it. And the fact that they're subjective on the laws that they do enforce is even more problematic, in my opinion. But that's a whole nother argument. The point I'm trying to make is that they know where they can go. They know where they're going to be able to generate money, right? And so in my opinion, that's a business. It's not for my safety, right? I've said it before, but the idea and concept of protect and serve, that's not their job. Their job is to enforce laws. Protecting us is a byproduct of them doing that job, right? So like, if I have a weapon and I point it at you and a cop shoots me to prevent me from shooting you, his job wasn't to save you. His job was to prevent me from fucking having a gun, right? And shooting somebody, right? So yes, that transfers over to he just saved your life, but that's not the intended purpose, right? So when I look at these things, that's how I feel. That's how I feel. And let me give you a little bit of a backstory of why I feel the way that I do about highway patrolmen and motorcycle highway patrolmen at that, okay? Now, I'm sure we could probably all agree that first impressions are critical, right? You've heard it probably several times throughout your life that first impressions are everything, right? Let me take you back to a time when I was a 17-year-old kid, okay? I was driving down a state road here in Utah, okay? It's a pretty busy state road, but a state road nonetheless, which means that the highway patrolman can patrol it, right? I'm 17 years old. The car that I'm in is a piece of shit. It's a piece of crap. I was 17 years old. But at that time, the county that I lived in actually had safety inspections, right? So it was safe to drive. It just looked like crap. 17-year-old kid. I'm driving down this road, and there's a motorcycle cop on my passenger side. And the front wheel of his bike is probably in line with the middle of the car door assembly, okay? And what he's trying to do is he's literally close enough to my vehicle, and I can see him looking inside the vehicle to try to see what he can see, okay? Up ahead of me, there's a giant pothole, and I can see it. I mean, it's big, right? To the left of me is a concrete median. And then, of course, to the right of me, is Mr. Highway Patrolman traveling so close to my car that the slightest move is going to look like an act of aggression or potentially even make him crash, which I don't want to do, right? So I have three options: take out the cop, hit the median, or slam into the pothole. So I choose that option, and I keep driving straight, and I slam into this pothole. Well, this doesn't provoke, it causes the highway patrolman to slow down, and he gets behind me, and he pulls me over. And when he says why he pulled me over, he says, it's because you hit that pothole. And I said, well, first of all, what's wrong with hitting a pothole? And he says, well, it's just suspicious. Why did you try to dodge it? To which I told him, well, what did you want me to do? Swerve towards you? That's when the BS started, right? And of course, I'm a young kid in a really crappy car, and I definitely fit a profile at that time in my life, right? And it turns into this entire ordeal just to the end result to be to let me go. That was my first interaction with him. That was it. And so, though I know I understand that in order to be a successful police officer, you have to profile. Like the profiling thing has always been a double-edged sword for me, because I've been in situations where you have to profile people for your own safety and to also just understand the situation, right? Like, you'll never be successful at that job if you try to pretend that everybody who looks like a criminal isn't a criminal, right? That's how I feel about it. Does that mean it's right? No, I'm not going to say that it's right. I just think that it's an an unavoidable evil of that. You know what I mean? And so it is what it is. And again, I admit at that stage in my life, I fit a certain profile, but it cemented the way that I viewed the highway patrol, because I'd had problems with the police before at that point. This wasn't my first interaction with police. It was just my first interaction with highway patrolmen, right? And there was no doubt about it why I had the interactions with the police. So there was no issue there. And to this day, I would say that I will never fight and say that they should have never bothered me. I was doing dumb things. I was being a knucklehead kid, you know what I mean? So when I say things like I don't like these guys, it's not because I don't support police. What I don't support is a lot of the things that they're enforcing, and the fact that they're doing it as a way to profit, right? Because, I mean, Chargers don't buy themselves, I promise you, because I'm sitting in one. Harleys don't buy themselves. Tahoes don't buy themselves. All that gear, all the upgrades and things like that, they don't buy themselves. You know what I mean? You know, I'm just saying, you see undercover, I haven't personally seen it, but apparently there's an undercover Corvette. They don't buy themselves, right? So the whole point of this is to outline that the police, the highway patrol in particular, I don't want to say the police, because from my perspective, in my opinion, local police are generally doing other things. They're responding to, you know, disputes between two old neighbors over a fence, or they're doing something actually like big, where they're responding to like domestic violence and things like that, things that we actually need a presence at, right? So like, I support that. For the most part, they're not generally providing tickets, unless you live in like a town like I do, where there's literally nothing else going on but people speeding, right? But for the most part, like, if they catch you in the act, they're going to do it. They're going to get you. But most of the time, they're not sitting on the side of the road just waiting for it. Do they do that? Sure. But most of the time, that's not what they're doing, especially the bigger the city is, I think. You know, if you live out here where I live, for sure, they're definitely camping out waiting for you to speed by. But again, we know it's a source of revenue. It's a source of revenue. And I was thinking about it earlier. You know, if my kids mess up or break one of my house laws, I don't fine them. I punish them, right? And that's usually in the form of more chores or something like that, right? But it's not a fine. And then, you know, I do understand that people have fought against the idea of punishment for things like that. But I think that just goes to show how ridiculous some of this stuff is. You know, the state of Utah just repealed repealed, removed. I'm not sure which political term to use. Okay, so there's no need to correct me. If you want to, feel free. I don't really care. But they just repealed or removed the law that said that you had to have a front license plate. And that, to me, is something that should have never been instituted. Because I cannot see the benefit outside of being able to run a plate from the front for information. The reason that I'm told I have to have a license plate is so that they know that my car is registered, right? Well, in the state of Utah, all your registration stuff's on the back. So why does it matter if I got one up front? Right? They just repealed that, removed that. That, to me, was an easy way for them to pull people over and make money. It's dumb, right? From what I understand, in the state of Utah, you can still get a ticket for your tint being too dark, but it's not supposed to be a reason that they can pull you over. So it can't be their probable cause for pulling you over anymore. But if they pull you over for, say, a taillight being out, and you happen to have dark windows, then you'll get a ticket for that as well, right? And what did that stem from? Well, to the best of my knowledge, the tint laws came into effect because there was a couple cops that got shot by people in heavy tinted windows, and they couldn't see it coming, so they instituted legislation to protect them from that, which sounds good, sounds great, except for the fact that you can also attribute a lot of like sun glare and everything like that to what? Regular traffic accidents. And I would say that statistically is probably higher than cops getting shot on the side of the road. Now, don't twist this up. I'm not encouraging, nor am I supporting the concept of that happening to anybody, okay? Do not twist this up. What I'm saying is that though that's a valid reason for your argument, it's a law to protect you as the officer, but it does not make sense for everybody else, right? What does it matter if I want my windows dark or light? And you say safety, right? Safety, the disguise of safety. I've gone over this 100 times, right? Yes, it is more difficult to see things at night sometimes with these tinted windows. I will 100% agree with that. But that is a risk that I have to be allowed to take. And if the result of that is that I crash into a car, I am liable to deal with that, right? And then you say, well, what if you hit a person? You're right. What if I hit a person? How many people get hit by cars that aren't tinted windows? Right? If you play the what if game, you have to play it in both directions. You know what I'm saying? What if the sun reflects off a soda can that somebody tossed out of their car that you didn't see, so they didn't get a ticket for it, right? And it just hits me in the eye, and I squint, and next thing you know, my hands follow my head movement, and then I'm going in and I take somebody out. Boom. That's just as logical, right? That's just as plausible, I guess I should say. So that's all I'm getting at. I don't support the highway patrolmen when they're out there just collecting money for the King's Highway. That's what I call it. It's the King's Highway. It's easy pickings. You know? There's some turns out here that if you took those turns at 70 miles an hour in a 1970s car, yeah, it's probably going to not go very well. They're top heavy. The suspension's not as great. They're heavier, right? Whatever the case is. But those same turns, I guarantee you I could take with ease in my cars right now at 90, 80, 90 miles an hour, right? But I understand that back in the time when they instituted the speed limits, that wasn't a thing, right? So the cars have modernized. The handling of them has improved dramatically. I mean, this car that I'm sitting in right now is leaps and bounds greater than any of those old cars from a performance standpoint, right? You can make all the arguments you want about the design and interior and stuff like that, right? But from performance standpoint, it's leaps and bounds ahead of them. You know what I'm saying? And all that is updated. But we still hold on to these concepts that we developed from an era that doesn't exist anymore, right? And if you challenge that, you're somehow looked at as like somebody who doesn't love this country. Now, I do love this country. I do think that we are a great country. I think that we could be better. And I'm not afraid to look at the things that we're doing wrong. And I've had contradictory opinions on them based off of things that I've learned. And so when these people respond this way, it really just kind of shows that they're not willing to, one, have a conversation about it, and two, that they're not willing to change their opinion with new facts and information. But there's literally been an entire investigation into how crazy it is and the amount of money that the states make off of fines and fees in the judicial systems like this, right? But they don't see that, because that kind of stuff doesn't get put up in your community pages. And maybe that's where I went wrong. Instead of making my little comment, maybe I should have just started with these facts. To be fair, at the time, I didn't even know these facts. I think deep down in my own personal way, I always knew that cops were doing a lot of this stuff just for financial gain. But that's actually proof of it. Like, they had that article has the statistical data to support it, right? I've just always thought it and said it. So very interesting, and I don't know, I wanted to share that because it's funny to me. Like, when you challenge somebody's values and ideas like that they think that they're supposed to have because of whether it's geographical location, family, whatever the case is, right? It's like it flips this switch. Like, I was literally about to ask them if they wear their retired cop gear to watch reruns of Law and Order. You know what I mean? Like, just really ignorant things. I was gonna roast these guys, man. I was gonna get into it. How many times you've been divorced? You know what I mean? Like, just because it's stupid. Like, all I did was I told these guys, hey, they're out there. Just keep your head on a swivel. And everybody feels like they have to back the blue and stand up for it. And I assume they're probably cops or family members of cops. But here's a news flash for you fuckers. My dad was a cop. Yeah. He wasn't like a city patrolman or anything like that, but he was a cop, civilian cop on a military installation. Not security guard. There was a difference, right, out there. He worked at the prison. He worked for the Federal Reserve Bank. I've got an uncle who was, I don't know if he still is, was a cop. My wife's uncle is a cop. One of my good friends, his dad was a FBI guy. I don't want to put too much of that out there. But it's been a part of my life too. And I still feel the same way that I do about it. I've got family members that have been in the military. I've been in the military. I've got family members in prison, right? I think everybody's in the same kind of boat. So the simple fact that I say that I don't support that does not mean that I don't support them. I don't support what they're enforcing. I'm not trying to judge these guys on a personal level. I'm not saying that if you're a highway patrolman that you're a piece of shit, right? I mean, I might feel that way if you treat me like crap, for sure, right? Like, if you're just kind of being a douchebag, I might ask you a question like, do you always think you're better than everybody, or just when you put the uniform on? You know what I mean? But in general, I'm not going to generalize it and say that, they're pieces of shit because of the job that they do. I just can't stand that aspect of it. I can't stand it. And, maybe it comes across as I'm saying it as an individual thing. So I could totally understand and see that. But I'm not. It's not. Okay? It's not meant to be. Let's put it that way. That's not my intention, I guess you could say. So I'm curious what you think. What do you guys think? I mean, do you think it's a little bit over the top, the things that we have to deal with, right? In terms of traffic in particular? Because again, I'll say it. I feel like I've seen more close call accidents and issues arise from cops being on the side of the road than I have from cars racing past me. I'm just saying. So is it really, do they really need to be there? That's all I'm asking, right? Like, what are you doing? Just being oppressive. You know what I mean? By nature. It's the nature of the job to be oppressive, because in my opinion, those laws or codes or whatever you want to call them are oppressive in nature. They have to be, right? So that's the real problem. There's certain things that I truly believe that we should have, right? Like, you shouldn't have the right to murder people. You shouldn't have the right to kidnap people. Like, those are big deal things, right? You shouldn't have the right to steal money from people. You shouldn't have the right to damage people's property. But if you buy a car, you shouldn't have to pay the state. Just saying. If our tax money truly does fund the roadway, it shouldn't be considered a privilege for me to drive on it. That's insane to me to just think about that out loud and say, it's a privilege for me to be able to drive on roads that I supposedly fund, whether that be through, regular taxes or just sales tax, whatever it is, gas tax, I don't know, right? It's insane to think that they have the right to tell us that it's a privilege, if you want my opinion. That's crazy to me, right? I shouldn't have to register my car with you every single year. You want me to register it first time purchase so that it's legit and authentic? Cool. I think I could probably stomach that. You pay the taxes on it, you register it the one time, boom, you're done. But an every year thing? Now it's just for money. That's my opinion. I'm sure there's a lot of argument about ownership and things like that, how it can transfer and this and that. Okay, cool, I understand that, but that's a separate problem, right? If I sell my car and the other people don't register it, that's not on me, that's on them. They got to pay for it, right? Now, if I sell my car to them with my plate, that kind of changes it, right? Now they don't have a reason to just stop and find out that I sold it to them because it's already registered. They have no probable cause just based off of that to just pull you over. So they'll find something else. And I think that's what bothers me the most is that they're pulling people over. They're literally wasting people's time in hopes that they find something else, right? Like when I got a speeding ticket doing like 117 miles an hour, that's totally on me. You know what I mean? Like I didn't even fight it. I didn't even make the guy chase me down. I saw him start moving, and I pulled over to the side of the road, and I waited for him because there was nobody else he was going to be going after because there was nobody else on the road. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that, right? I messed that up. I admit it. It wasn't intentional, to be 1,000% honest. And once I realized it, I said, shit. It is what it is. I didn't contest the ticket. I paid it. Whatever. It is what it is, right? But if you're going to bother me for going 85 and an 80 or 80 and a 75 or because I didn't know that the damn light over my freaking license plate was over, if you're going to waste my time to tell me those things in hopes that you find something else, you're hoping, and then if you don't find it, but you were confident you were going to find it, you still write a citation, right? And then part of it's on me because I'm kind of mouthy, right? Like I don't care about the way that they feel about me driving fast. I don't care. I don't care, right? Because when I did get pulled over, the cop says, well, what would have happened if you blew a tire out? I don't know, but it didn't happen. So are you writing me a ticket for something that could have happened but didn't happen? Because that doesn't make sense. How are you gonna punish me for something that didn't even happen just because you thought it was gonna happen? It doesn't make any sense, right? I don't know. I feel a certain kind of way about that stuff because that's why I say like they're taxing the king's highways. There's no other way around it, in my opinion. And again, I want to highlight that I am not saying that they don't do good things, right? I know that there is traumatic situations that happen on the highways, okay? And I know that these guys and gals are usually the first ones there, and there's probably a fair amount of them that have had to internalize some traumatic shit, and I sympathize with that. I truly do. That part of it, I truly sympathize with. And if that's what they're out there for, in a way I can get it, right? But at the same time, how can we say things like freedom and then literally obsess and support the systems that are meant to take that away? That doesn't make sense to me. Like we literally have an entire culture that cop shows are prime entertainment television. So, I don't know. That's just where I'm at with it. Let me know what you guys think. So I'm out of here, guys. Okay, so as always, you can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/average discussion, Instagram, average discussion, Threads, average discussion, X, @AVG discussion, bitches, gripes, complaints, death threats, because I said I don't like highway patrolmen. You can email me directly at averagediscussion@gmail.com. Yeah, outside of that, as always, guys, please take care of yourselves. Please take care of each other. And until next time, I'm out.